So the topic for this evening is, well, it's our extraterrestrial friends, but it's about more than that because we have a very vast spectrum of consciousness in the galaxy that we're in the process of becoming aware of. So I'm going to kind of start back to how my awareness of this began, because my own experience of becoming aware of this was so dramatic that it says something, I think, about how a lot of people are going to experience it. Because right now there's a lot of information out there in the world about that we're being visited by ETs, and we have friends out there, and there's other experiences we have to be discerning about, and there's also stories that are promoting fear. And right now, for, I would say, most people on the planet, the whole concept is still very much in the intellect. It's not really yet a conscious experience. And what we're moving towards, beyond just the intellectualization of that we're not alone in the universe, is an actual experience of reconnection with the galactic field of consciousness, which is also a big part of our awakening. So really, in this whole series of talks, we're talking about different elements of our awakening, things that are drivers of that awakening. So in 1995, I just started to explore some channel books, and I was reading Barbara Marciniak's book, Bringers of the Dawn, which, how many of you have read that? That was a pretty influential book for me because it made a lot of sense that if there are advanced civilizations out there, that they could be communicating with us telepathically, that maybe they don't want to come down here and land. Maybe they have reasons not to do that. Maybe they know we're not ready for that. And so they're communicating with a select few. They're getting a message out and teaching us and preparing us for something more that's coming about our relationship with the galactic community. So that made a lot of sense to me. But I was very curious. I wanted to know more. And it was that same year, in January actually, that I started having out-of-body experiences. Well, as soon as I discovered that I could go out-of-body, I had already read a lot about this. I thought, well, show me the ETs. I want to know where they are. If this is going to be my experience now, that's where I want to go first. And so I started within a matter of weeks of having these experiences on a regular basis. And I joke about how it was really the really super uncomfortable beds in the dorms that helped me to produce that mind-awake, body-asleep state, because I could never sleep well in these beds. But I would have these experiences of energy coming in, and I was lifting up out of my body, and I started asking, are there guides that can come and teach me and show me how to use this state of consciousness to explore, how to control it? And one of the first things that I asked was, can you take me to where I can see extraterrestrial ships? If they are here, I'd like to see them. And sure enough, within a matter of a few days, nights, that happened. And I found myself out of body, and I saw these vehicles of light. I knew they were made of light because they could change shape, they could change form. I just felt that they were energetic in nature. And I was watching them coming and going, and it was all normal. And the first thing I noticed was that I was in a region of non-physical reality that I knew was the afterlife. So I thought, well, that's interesting that these extraterrestrial beings are occupying that same vibratory level of reality. Of course, there are many different vibratory levels of reality, and these beings can move through all of them. They can go back and forth between many different dimensions and vibrations of reality. At least some of them can. The interesting ones can. So I said, this is really cool. I was kind of saying this out to the universe, I'm fascinated by this. This is wonderful, but could I see one of these in physical reality? Because I need to sort of ground the reality of this into my physical level of being to know that this is really real. That, because this whole out-of-body experience thing is new to me, and it's not as real as if I saw one in the physical. And I'd like to have a couple friends with me when it happens so that they know I'm not crazy. Sure enough, and this is the funny thing about time, is that I must have been slightly in the future creating the experience of what was going to happen the next night, because when I came back into the body, it's like my awareness of what had occurred was erased and didn't return to me until after the experience happened. Well, the next night we're out at the lake, we're looking at the stars, and there's some kind of a light that starts coming down. And at first I thought, well, maybe it's a plane. But there was something different about it. If you watch a plane go through the air, the headlights, or the lights that shine out, they reflect in the dust of the air, or the smog, whatever. You can see like a beam that stretches out. And these lights didn't do that. They stopped and started in the same place. I thought, that's strange for light on a plane to do that. It's something that already didn't make sense to my senses. And it came all the way down and got lower and lower and lower and lower, and I thought, that can't be a plane, until it was literally hovering just above the water of this lake, on the other side of the lake. And then it turned, and it kind of stopped and turned and started moving towards us. And I thought, maybe it's a helicopter. A plane doesn't do that, or maybe a helicopter does, but as it got closer and closer, it was apparent that there's no sound. And so at that point, freaking out, like, there's no sound. This means something. And my friends are kind of freaking out too. And then it just lights up with all of these lights and starts kind of spinning and rotating. And there was a charge of energy that felt like it just went through the land itself. It got as close as, I want to say, maybe like less than 50 yards. Maybe closer. I don't want to say it was too much closer than that, but it definitely wasn't further away than that. And then I felt this presence inside of me, like I was being probed from the inside, like their awareness was in my mind. And the first thing I thought is like, oh no, we're going to be abducted. So I didn't want that to happen. And I felt a fear come up inside. And I said, we got to get out of here. So I started running for the car, and I don't know if my friends were quite ready to let go of the experience yet, but they were like, okay, well, I'm going with you. And so we got in the car, and in my mind, there's like scenes playing from movies, like I'm going to get in there, and I'm going to turn the key, and the engine's not going to start. But no, sure enough, it started up, and we went down the road, and I could still see it through the trees because it followed along for a little while, and then it disappeared. And by the time we left, I realized, wow, they didn't intend to abduct us. There was nothing nefarious going on. What would have happened if we had stayed? So I had also, around the same time, met a clairvoyant woman. And it was a very interesting experience because I saw her out of body first and had a conversation with her, and she showed me that she was one of my guides, but she also has a physical body. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. You're one of my guides, but you're here on Earth. How does that work? And within a couple of weeks, I met her. Very synchronistically. There was a whole series of mysterious synchronicities that led me to meet this woman, and she invited me to lunch, and I went and talked with her for a while. And she said, I'm a Pleiadian, walk-in. I come from the Pleiades, I come from a starship, and I do work to anchor light on the planet. This was all totally new to me at the time. This is like 20 years ago. And she said that these are beings of light, and they travel in vehicles made of light and sacred geometry. Again, first time I'm hearing this, but it just made sense. It was like, oh, that's how they do it. These are not physical vehicles, at least not all of them. They're made of light, and light can move at different speeds and vibrate at different speeds, and that's how they're able to travel such vast distances, because they're beings of light. They're not bound by the same physical rules that we are in our physical bodies. And she was the one that said that, if you had stayed there, then they might have appeared to you or gotten out and talked with you and, given you some information. Like, oh gosh, sorry I missed out on that. But she said, you can communicate with them. If you're in a remote area, you send out a signal, they can come and communicate to you, and I've done this many, many times. And so I thought, okay, I've got to try that. And this is long before, I had heard things about, like, Dr. Stephen Greer and the CE5 initiative of human-initiated contact. So I kind of discovered those contact protocols in my own way because my friends and I went out to another lake and we tried to make contact. And we had 2 more experiences after that that absolutely confirmed for us what this was. Now, what was really interesting about all of this is that the first experience brought up this fear. Like, I'm afraid I'm going to be abducted. I didn't know what that was about. But I thought to myself, you know, maybe something happened to me before. Maybe I've had some kind of experience. And that's why that fear came up. Otherwise, you know, why would that happen? Because they obviously were benevolent. They were interested in us. There didn't seem to be a reason to be afraid, but there was a deep fear inside that came up. Well, I discovered much later on that there had been an abduction experience that happened in childhood, and my memory of it had been completely blocked. Now, there's a lot of fear promoted about the contact experience, and some of it relates to people having these kind of frightening abduction experiences. In my case, it was with a group of beings that known as the Zeta Reticuli, and they are a group mind energy, and they are semi-physical beings. They're closer to our density than a lot of the others that we're having contact with, but they also are very closed in their emotional bodies, and so they feel, when you're in their presence, like a pure mental energy. And to a sensitive, emotional child, that's extremely frightening because you just can't relate to that, and you feel like they can't relate to you. It's a shocking experience to feel like you're in the presence of these beings and there's no one else there. Your parents aren't there, nobody else around. So I knew that I had some experience buried deep down that was fearful that I didn't want to remember. And I tried to do self-hypnosis. I tried to figure this out, and it just wasn't time until it was time. Well, what was interesting about this is that when it was time, I was shown that on the night that this experience happened, there was an angel that appeared to me, and I had the whole memory come back to me where this brilliant angel of light came in and said that you have a soul contract to have a meeting with these beings. They need some of your DNA. It's important, and I'm going to be with you the whole way, and you're not going to remember this afterwards, and you won't need that memory for a long time, and it's okay, don't worry. And so I saw that even through that experience, though it was frightening, there was an angelic presence that was there with me through the whole thing. Because some of these experiences needed to happen. Now, there's other kinds of abduction experiences, and I don't want to dwell too much on that subject because there's so many more exciting things to talk about, but you know, there's other kinds of experiences happening where our free will choice, our choice as a soul, is not being respected in the same way. In this case, permission was asked of the soul, and the soul agreed, and you know, the incarnated personality had the experience, which is usually how these things go. But coming back to crossing the threshold, what I found was that the experience of contact, it wasn't just an experience of discovering that we're not alone in the universe, or that, wow, there's extraterrestrials and they're interested in us, and they even know us, and in some cases they know more about who we are than we remember about who we are. It was an experience of reconnection to a field of consciousness, really a whole spectrum of consciousness that we're a part of, that our souls are a part of. But over the past so many tens of thousands of years, we have been encased within the womb of time, and the illusion of time has characterized our experience of being in the physical and being in the body. And so that illusion of time has been one of the things that has blocked us from being connected to a greater unified field of consciousness. The reason why that's coming to an end now is not just because that kind of a filter is being worn down by increasing levels of contact with higher beings. It's that the Creator itself is initiating a change. There's a resonance field, a universal resonance field of basically of the circle that contains the universe itself, being imbued into the matter of this whole world. And that circular presence, that circular universal resonance field, is having an effect on our nervous systems. And it's breaking down linear thinking and linear perception, and specifically linear perception of time. So as we become connected with the unified cycle of time and cyclical time, that universal resonance field of the circle, it has a certain psychological effect on our brains that allows us to tap into the hidden code of time, which is more circular in nature.